What's going on, everybody? How goes the battle? So I'm sitting here in Johannesburg in South Africa, and traveled in from Botswana last night. Had to do a PCR test in Botswana, which tested negative. That got me on a flight into Johannesburg. Now, the plan for today, first of all, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to myself. Thank you very much. But I know a lot of people are like, hey, we want to watch or learn or know how your trip's going. So it's kind of, that's the update that I'm trying to give right now. And I'll try to post this all the way through from now till whatever time I get home. So in saying that, going back to the story here, traveled in from Botswana, had my negative PCR test, flew SA Link into Johannesburg. Did a PCR last night at the PCR testing place here in town, and unfortunately it looks like on the Canadian website that something has changed a little bit, where now instead of 72 hours it's only 48 hours from the time you do your PCR to the time you arrive in Canada. And my scheduled flight right now brings me into Vancouver at, I think in and around lunchtime tomorrow, which is actually past 48 hours from my time of getting the PCR in town. So right now the debate is whether or not I'm supposed to actually get another PCR here in town before I leave, and then hopefully when I arrive in Frankfurt, Germany, that PCR test result will have come through in my email, so that way I have one that's within 48 hours. So all sorts of challenges, all sorts of little idiosyncrasies courtesy of the Canadian government and their knee-jerk reactions to travelers. It's a little disappointing when you go through all the hoops to play by the rules to make sure that you got all your vaccinations, whether or not you believe in them or don't believe in them. That's not up for debate. But I did it for travel, to continue doing the work that I do. But to go through all of that process, and then to have been working for the past year in Botswana, traveling back and forth to Canada with no problems, and then just to wake up a couple mornings before Christmas, leave, and Canada has completely changed their rules for all travelers from only 10 countries. So to put that into perspective, I just had a friend that lives in the Yukon, a really good guy, and he traveled down to Mexico, to Puerto Vallarta, for a week-long vacation. So, same thing, he's double vaccinated or whatever. But what I don't understand is that he went to a resort with, a couple hundred to a couple thousand people on the beaches, in the pubs and restaurants. And then he flies back to Vancouver and then back up to Yukon. No quarantine, no need for anything. And then you take somebody like myself that's in Botswana for work, and my company has a COVID management plan. The company that we work at, the mine site, has a COVID-19 management plan. I go through every morning through a thermal facial recognition check. It also gives you a temperature check. And then we have to maintain social distancing. We have to wear our masks all day long outside in a construction project, and hand sanitize. And then I live in an isolated location with only one other person the entire time. So my chance of exposure is virtually non-existent. It's probably actually more likely that I'll pick something up in Vancouver than I would at this mine site. But my problem is that we have all these safeguards in place, and we followed all the Canadian government's rules and regulations and policies, and yet, because I'm from one of these 10 countries that they first discovered this new variant, we're penalized for it, which doesn't make any sense. For the last 2 years, I've heard follow the science, and I would love to talk to somebody about the science behind how we only close borders to 10 countries out of the entire world. If you go back into the interviews from the South African doctors that actually found this variant, it wasn't actually in a South African resident. It was a traveler the first 6 identified people with this new variant came from out of country, and it was South Africa that identified it because they have such good programs and tracing records, and then they were penalized for it. But on top of that, you know, the individual people that are trying to travel home that have done everything right or everything by law, and they're being penalized for it, and then the goalposts keep changing. When you wake up in the morning and there's a new stipulation or a new change in plans or how it's going to be conducted, right? And then mentally, I'm preparing myself now to get into Vancouver, and I go into a quarantine hotel, and it's just like, how does that make any sense? So by the time this is done, I'll have had 2 rapid antigen tests that both tested negative in Botswana. Then I'll have a PCR that tested negative that apparently just in the last week suddenly is no longer valid for entry into Canada, but it's recognized internationally everywhere else. So how does that make sense? Like, I don't know. But anyways, so two antigens, PCR test. Then I come into South Africa. I'm going to do a PCR test. But because the Canadian government decided to change from 72 hours to 48 hours, I have to do another PCR test. And then I'm going to fly for 20 hours in an airplane with fully vaccinated travelers, all who have done the same PCR tests. And I'm going to land in Canada, in Vancouver, and I'm going to do another PCR test. Why? What's the science behind that? I just don't understand. But I'll do a PCR test, and then that's going to be negative, but I'm still going to go into a hotel and wait for an undetermined amount of time until Health Canada has decided that it approves me. This is the same people that said follow the science that locked down only 10 countries out of the entire world, even though this variant and many other variants are traveling all throughout the world. So what isn't working? You know, double vaccinated, wear your mask, social distancing. We've been doing that for 2 years, and it doesn't seem to be helping. And then now there's a new variant of concern. And so far, the people that I do know personally, so it's not even secondhand knowledge, personally know that have had this variant already and been exposed to it. 2 of them didn't even know they had it, no signs and symptoms, and the ones that did were super, super mild. So if this is such a concerning variant, why are we still going to Cancun and can travel home from Cancun without any issue? So I don't understand. But anyways, I'm going to keep filming my journey here through the airports and through the testing, and we'll see what the outcome of this is. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed to be Canadian at the moment, although I guess we're maybe half step better than the UK right now. I don't know, but anyways, I wish things were a little bit different. It's interesting that I'm about to spend 2022 or 2021's birthday just as I did in 2020 in quarantine, but I guess that's the way it goes, right? I mean, I guess this is affecting everybody, so it's not just my complaints, but yeah, anyways, we'll see what the next 48 hours has in store for this guy. Yeah, anyways, talk to you guys later, and we'll go from there.